Welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to discuss the top 21 things you need to do once getting the notification. This video is intended primarily for the persons named executor of the will and the immediate family. These things are critical to be done within the first 72 hours of passing and definitely before the death certificate is created. Why are these so important, you might be asking? You need time to process what just happened, right? Well, sorry, you don't have any time, especially if you are the executor of the estate or care about ensuring any legacy for your loved one. As I start going through each of them, hopefully you'll understand why these are so important and why they can't wait, besides coordinating how they will be laid to rest. These are not in any particular order. These can be done directly in line or at different times, but again, these need to be done within the first 72 hours. So first, if this is a parent and they don't live with a partner who is the executor, then the executor needs to go to the post office or online and do a permanent forward of all mail to their home, or whoever's home is going to act as the central location where correspondence is going to go to. This process potentially takes 1 week, and you will need to see the bills and inquiries as soon as possible. You're going to need to get access to their email if you don't have it already. This is going to be needed for any of the one-time password or two-factor authentication for their online accounts, as well as to see any e-bills and transactions they may have. You are going to need to get physical access to their phone and hopefully know their PIN code or swipe or something else, and they don't just have facial recognition. Again, you're going to need this for any one-time password or two-factor authentication for any online accounts. It will also be your way to work through their contacts to help you with notifications and help cancel any appointments where necessary. You're also going to need to get access to their path profile. This means their laptop, electronic vault, some Rolodex, or old-fashioned notebook that they might keep their usernames and passwords. This is going to be needed for information about accounts for funds for many of the upcoming expenses that need to be paid by the estate, as well as getting insurance policy and annuity information that are not going to be available until after the death certificate is issued, which may take weeks after the funeral. You're going to need to find the original will. You're going to need that original will in order to do a lot of the activities, especially filing for probate. If you don't have the original will, it will almost be as if there is no will at all. Now, after you get a copy of the original will, it will be good to take this will to a notary and make at least 2 or 3 copies, and have these copies be made certified as original, just in case the original is damaged in any way. And then you can put the original in a secure and safe place. You're going to need to create a list of all life insurance, annuity, bank accounts, crypto accounts, credit cards, and other financials that exist for the person, including the location of the deeds to their homes, titles to their vehicles, safety deposit boxes, storage units, and everything else. I know it is morbid and odd to do, but you need to understand where there is funding as fast as possible and where there is ready funds to pay for funeral and other final expenses. You will need to find out if they have a funeral or burial trust and the information about where they want to be buried and cremated. If they don't have this established, you as executor are going to need to work with the immediate family to make the decisions about this, just as discussed in a prior video. You're going to next need to secure their homes. You're going to need to make sure you have access to their primary residence and other homes. This means having keys, making sure that they work, or other means to access their place. It also means making sure that items in the fridge and freezer, besides the trash, are emptied appropriately so that food doesn't spoil or rot. It also means dumping the trash and doing basic cleaning so bugs and vermin don't attempt to breed in the place until you and others can get back to it at some later time. You are going to need to secure the funds in their primary bank account. If they collect Social Security, once notified, a few things are going to happen. Since security pays 1 month in advance, they will rescind payment. So if a person dies in the middle or end of a month, the entire month will be returned. If they died in the beginning of the month, then Social Security will either not send funds or rescind just that issued payment. So it won't be that much of a big deal. But when Social Security learns of their passing, if the account is an individual account, not a joint account or a trust account, then the account is going to be frozen and or closed. And when I mean frozen, I mean any checking, savings, or brokerage account that is in an individual account, not a joint account, will no longer be accessible until you work through the probate or deceased services team from that bank. Which means depending on the bank, that can take months or a year or longer, depending on the bureaucracy, to get those funds back and be able to use them. So even though it is officially illegal because it is classified as fraud or embezzling, you will most likely need to coordinate the transfer of the funds out of that bank account to one that is either a joint account you established with them before they passed or a personal account. And if they had Social Security, making sure to leave the amount from that last Social Security check in that account so it can be rescinded back to Social Security without any issues. Regardless of what type of account you are transferring it to, you will need to make sure you note down the beneficiary details associated with the account that's being moved. If the beneficiary is a trust, there is no reason to have the funds moved. Just work with the successor trustee to handle the coordination under the proper and legal methods. If the funds were intended to be directed from the estate to a specific person or organization, you will need to note this down because you're going to be now using estate funds that were intended to be directed to a person or a particular person or persons or entities such as charities, and you will need to eventually pay out that amount to them if possible after estate expenses are handled and additional funding is made available. If there is not an electronic transfer method to the other account or Zelle in place, you will need to establish a bill pay to handle the transfer. Again, it needs to be noted that this is officially illegal to do this, even though we all have been potentially taught that this should occur after someone has passed on. So to avoid any criminal charges, you will need to make sure that all of the ducks are in a row, and this is being done by the executor of the estate from the most updated will, who knows and accepts the potential actions that might occur if something is started or questioned about your or their actions with the funds. So you or they better be keeping a ledger of everything. If you are not sure what the ledger should look like, don't worry. In another video, I'm going to provide a link to a very basic one so you can have something to help you with the estate handling. Make sure there is a checking account or a brokerage account with check writing ability available to you that has their name on it besides from their primary bank. And you as executor or another member of the family has full access to it. If this doesn't exist, you're going to be in an extreme disadvantage because, as I mentioned before, if they had Social Security, their primary account, meaning their primary bank, is going to most likely be frozen, and you will need check writing ability so that you can write checks from and deposit checks that are going to be in their name while waiting to get past the probate process. Remember, you have typically 180 days from the date on a check to deposit it before it needs to be reissued. And if funds are automatically transferred into the deceased account that was frozen, the deposits will most likely continue to be accepted, but you will not have access to any of it until you're able to get things worked out with the bank's deceased services department or their probate team. Also, if there are automatic income payments, like from a rental income or a side hustle or passive income stream that they had, you will need to divert that to another place that it can continue to be properly recorded and handled, because if you don't, all of those funds will continue to flow into the primary account. And if that gets frozen, you're going to have issues knowing the balance to get that processed from the primary bank. And you may lose funds once the account is then fully closed as part of the estate handling process with them. Now, I can't say this officially because this is completely illegal, and this is considered fraud, and impersonating a deceased person. But if the account I just mentioned that has their name on it doesn't exist, and the family knows and gives you permission to do it, you might want to think about creating a joint account post-mortem with you as executor as the primary named person and them as secondary to help out. Again, you will need to understand the consequences if someone reports you. But if you as executor didn't work out something as part of life planning and that primary account is going to get frozen, locked out, or closed until probate is completed, I'm just saying, proceed with caution to handle the estate. Before I continue further, I want to make sure I note this for anyone watching. When I have acted as executor of an estate, I have already had these accounts where their name was on it and I had access to them of some kind, because I had already worked through financial life planning with them ahead of time, and I built the trust needed to be the executor, meaning that I am acting or I'm executing their actions related to the estate to the best of my ability and avoiding any malice or making sure that I'm not performing anything that doesn't match to their wishes. Or to say it a little differently, I told them repeatedly, I don't care about their money. I have my own. I'll do the best I can to do what they tell me or what I think they would have done if I'm unsure. Anyway, on to number 12. Secure the person's wallet and or purse. You are going to need their IDs, and you're going to want to ensure that you know where their credit cards are and any money that might still be in their wallet or purse. Obtain, if you don't have it already, their social security number, date of birth, full name including middle names, address they use for billing, email address details they use for billings, mother's maiden name. Yes, I'm talking about all the information that makes up a person's identification. As executor, or the family member that will be acting or helping the executor, you are going to need this information to work with the financial institutions to locate account details and records. They may not provide you any details if you have not already been added before the person passed to the authorized person list, but you can get the mailing information and email details when you're ready to handle this stuff later, and then send that in so that they now know to work with you because you are the executor. Do not tell any financial institution the person has passed. Once you do this, the accounts are going to be closed or frozen, and then you are going to have to wait to get access to those funds during the probate or deceased services process with that institution, which potentially could have been set up incorrectly by the person and leaves the estate with potentially nothing to handle the final expenses and wishes. During these first 72 hours, your whole role is about getting information, collecting it, and potentially transferring funds away to pay for final expenses if possible, not closing any accounts or doing any type of notification. Freeze their credit reports. This is a free service offering from the three major credit reporting companies, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. I will provide you the links in the description, but you will need to know their social security number and the other details I mentioned earlier, and potentially other personal information that if you don't know it, their next of kin or other family members should. Things like what street they lived on or old places they used to live at. This is so critical because you are trying to prevent potential new accounts being created in their name without you as executor or the immediate family knowing about it. Take all accounts off of paperless wherever possible. I know there's this green movement and a surge to go paperless, but you need for at least a period of time to know where and what all the bills are so that you can determine if they need to be paid or not, or they can wait for a later time when they might go to collections and then pay nothing or pennies on the dollar. Because in the end, you're going to need to know about those bills that are holding costs for their primary location, especially you're living in it. When you're at the post office, get a roll of forever stamps if you don't already have any, and at least 5 to 10 priority envelopes. For a short period of time, again, until you have their estate under control, it is recommended that you pay bills using a check if you're going to need to pay any holding costs for their residences. This is to ensure solid record keeping and to not mix their expenses with your own. And so you know the difference between your bills and theirs. If you're the executor, but there is a different family member that will be handling the bills, work to make sure that they have everything accounted for so that this can be done properly with the deceased funds, and that there is the ability to have a record of it so that you can work to reimburse them from the estate when and if that's even possible. Another reason why you're going to need to have the forever stamp and the ability to write checks is that when and if you create an estate account, at least from what I know of at the time of this video, the estate account in many traditional financial institutions will not be something that will allow online bill pay. It will act very similar to a very old-fashioned passbook where you will be given checks that will be written against the estate account, and you will be writing the amounts in a paper ledger. 18. Once you get access to their online accounts, start adding your email and your phone number as an additional point of contact. This way, your email and phone can potentially be used for the two-factor authentication in case their phone is not accessible to you because it is located at someone else's place, it gets damaged or lost. Notify their job of their passing so that you can work with human resources to start to understand the medical benefits, insurance plans, health savings accounts, etc. that might exist. And you will need to start working with them as well to make the appropriate changes and payouts. This means that if the person who passed was the primary holder of health benefits, you might need to start looking now for new health benefits for you and the rest of the family to have, because potentially now you and the other members of the family are no longer covered, and you'll need to get insurance from either now your or another family member's job, or get a plan from one of the exchanges or group policies. Contact your job to discuss bereavement time. No matter if you are an immediate family member or a person that will be acting as the executor or handling parts of the final wishes, you are going to need time to work on everything. A few days or even 2 weeks of bereavement is going to go by very fast, and you are going to need time, dedicated time, to focus on the activities besides coming to terms with what has happened and work through their final arrangements to either bury them or cremate them. Work together with the immediate family and their friends as part of a phone tree and cyber tree to notify the person's family and friends of their passing, besides any of your own. You are going to need their support no matter how strong of a person you are. And in the long run, the people that matter will help you by doing check-in calls for a bit to make sure that you are still okay and support you as you handle the deceased's final wishes in some form or another. Those were my top 21, and you can see that these are extremely important. This next thing is not part of those top 21. It's extremely important too. If they had any pets or were the parent of any young children, special needs children, or responsible for being the guardian of someone, say like a grandparent or great-grandparent, you will need to promptly coordinate their temporary or permanent living arrangements. For example, if they had a young child when they passed and no other parent is available, they could end up going to foster care until the new guardians are set up. Also, if they had any pets, they need to be boarded, sheltered, or looked after in some way until a permanent decision can be made about them. And yes, I mean whether or not they are going to be adopted by a family friend yourself or potentially even be put down. I know this is a lot to take in, which is why I recommend watching this video a few times so you can take notes if you need to. Also, you can see there are a lot of things to do, so I encourage you to do life planning activities so that breadcrumbs exist for the people that will handle your affairs after you go to the next plane of existence. Also, speak with the person or persons that have made you their executor and see what you can do to get some of these things done ahead of time, or at least some of them before they pass on. The loss is going to be hard, and emotional. By handling your or their affairs without any guidance, hints, or assistance prior to your or their departure is just going to make it more stressful and more difficult. There's a joke I heard recently that if you don't like your family, leave no hints or guidance after you leave so you can make their lives miserable. I don't believe in this because it now means they become more and more bitter to you after they pass, and that's not good for your neshama or your spirit and them in the long run. As always, like, subscribe, and share this video with anyone you feel can benefit from this information. Also, feel free to leave any comments and I'll try to answer the best I can. Depending on what comments are left, it might mean I'll need to make additional videos to explain them, so feel free to ask anything.